up, True Crime World? You're here with Luminal on the Wall. I'm Becky.
I'm Bevy.
And what's up?
Yeah, what's up, world?
What's up,
what's
world?
up, sister?
Hey, Bevy. What's up? What's up? Well, Bev, do I have something to share with you today?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, I got my first sextortion email. Do you know what sextortion is?
No.
What?
Like, I feel like a sexy, like someone trying to, like, use you for services or something. For sexual services.
Like, you're kind of close. Like, you know, extortion?
Yes.
It's like that, only sextortion.
Okay, give me the deets.
Okay, so now it was a scam, first of all, but you know when you read something and you're like, your face goes a little hot and you kind of freak out for a brief moment?
Oh, yeah.
Until you realize, oh God, that's a scam. That's what happened to me. So I got this email a couple days ago and I kid you not, it started with, "Hey, pervert." And I was like, oh my God. What?
You're like, why would anyone be calling me a perv?
Yeah, so I'm like thinking maybe one of my friends just decided to email me because why would anyone say that?
Yeah.
But then I kept reading and it was like, "You've been naughty and I saw everything on your webcam." And I was like, oh my God, I just got a webcam. What the fuck? And it's like, "I know what porn you've been looking at, you naughty, naughty bitch." Okay? And it's like, "I have all the video of you masturbating to all these disgusting videos." And I was like, oh my God, what? And then you think of all the things that maybe you've done or haven't done. And you're
He's like, let me just like log the last couple times I was masturbating. Where was I?
Yes.
What was happening?
Right? You're like, okay.
Was I in front of my webcam?
And you know what the answer was? Definitely not. Definitely not. And because I'm always so scared that someone is going to hack my webcam, I literally have a camera. Like, look right now.
It's covered.
It's covered. Because no one's going to watch me work out. No one's going to watch me work, type my podcast. Like, that's what I do in front of my webcam. You know, it's just not what I do.
I have one on my Chromebook.
See?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I get that people are into all types of things and I'm not judging, but then you literally sit there and you're like, what have I watched that was so perverted to like get this freaking email?
So when did you like realize this is a scam? Probably pretty quickly then, hey?
Well, at first I panicked and I said, "Jamie, read this." And he read it and he burst out laughing. He's like, "Becky, it's a scam." And I was like, oh, thank God. Okay. Because
you're so naive though. Like, that's so cute.
Yeah. Well, I was really worried. I'd be like, oh my God, what? Did I do something inappropriate? And you literally try to go through your memory and it just kind of gets a little, muddled together. Because you're kind of panicking. And then I kept reading the email and it says, "If you don't want your friends and family to see you being a pervert, send me $1,500. I was like, you fucking idiot. I was like,
are you talking to yourself? Like, I should have read the rest of the
email?
Well,
a little bit because I did panic and my face felt like it went numb because I was just freaking out. But yeah, I was like, Becky, of course it's a scam.
Of course.
Of course it's a scam. And then I was like, joke's on you. Even if I believed it, I didn't have $1,500 to give you. I just paid all my bills.
Yeah.
Sucker.
That's right.
But it was scary and I can see how, if someone maybe had some dirty little secrets, they might get scared that their family could see it.
Absolutely.
And pay the $1,500.
Well, the fact that you got so nervous and had to talk to Jamie makes me think, Becky, maybe you are a naughty bitch. Anyway,
well, it was funny.
Crazy.
That's why Jamie was laughing because, like,
what are you doing?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm pretty darn vanilla. Like, I'm not risque. I would never film myself in just like because I don't want anything to end up online.
Yeah, so
I just would never.
Why
it's not
was
my
I
thing.
Even nervous?
Yeah, like I had no reason, Jamie. That's why he's laughing because he's like, "Why are you panicking?" I was like, "I don't know. I've never been sextorted before." Like,
sextorted.
Yeah,
I've never even heard that term before.
Yeah.
Well. Now we know what it is. And don't fall for scams, friends. Because, dang.
My God.
So, Becky, this is an interesting case. It takes place in Alberta.
Well, not really.
But it takes us back to Alberta, you said earlier.
Yeah, in a roundabout way.
Okay, interesting.
And what's really cool about this, Bevy, is that this year, in early January, this case was all over the news in Calgary. Here where we live.
Oh my God.
All over. I'm actually surprised you didn't hear about it. But yeah.
I'm not the biggest news watcher, but...
Well, Neither am I.
Maybe I have.
What you'll be
As
reading
we
and be like,
know.
oh yeah, I know all about this.
Yeah.
But anyways, I won't tell you why it ends up here in Alberta, but it is messy. It is a messy true crime story.
Okay.
So might as well just dive right in.
All right, let's go. All right, so this case is about a woman named Sharon Elizabeth Hall. She was born on November 30th, 1939 in Independence, Missouri. Her parents' names were Eugene and Doris Hall. They were a devout couple who were active members of the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Today, it's known as the Community of Christ. And religion was a prominent part of their life and played a big role in shaping the whole Hall family. In fact, the small, quaint city of Independence had a strong spiritual current running through it. Because of this, most people knew each other, and a lot of their socialization was through the church. Now, when Sharon was in junior high, the Hall family picked up and moved out west to Washington State. But the move didn't really stick, and by the time she was 15, they were already back in Missouri, right where they started in Independence. And around the summer of 1956, Sharon was 16 years old, and this is when she met a guy named James Kinne at a church event. He seemed older than her, but she was into that, so she ended up approaching him. It turned out that James was 22, and he was visiting his family for the summer because he was a student throughout the year at Brigham Young University in Utah. Now, James had that clean-cut, future husband energy that really made an impression. So Sharon told James that she was 20 years old and that she was also attending university, but that she was just taking some time off to be with her family.
Starting with a lie. Love that.
Yeah. It's like she must have been really attracted to him.
I mean, lots of people do that. I'm not saying it's okay or anything, but like lots of people do that because they're like, surely I'm younger. I'm gonna, tell
Well, she's 16, he's 22, right?
Yeah.
Like, decent age gap.
Yeah.
So maybe she thought, if I don't,
age myself,
he won't be interested in me.
That's right.
She didn't want to take no chances.
No, she did not.
Now, luckily for Sharon, to James, she seemed like the wholesome type of girl that he was looking for. And it didn't hurt that he thought she was pretty as well. And as we know, the attraction was mutual between them, so they started dating right away. And initially, it was perfect. James thought he had found his dream girl. But it wasn't long before Sharon's true colors were unveiled. In fact, she was a little bit mean and would shift from a loving, caring woman to someone who yelled a lot and blamed James for what she thought was her crappy life. So their short relationship was very up and down, and by the end of the summer, James was just super happy to be going back to Utah for school.
He's like, oh, thank God for university.
Now, this girl's batshit crazy, actually. Now, the thing about Sharon was that she really wanted to get out of Independence. She wanted a more exhilarating and luxurious lifestyle, and even though she was only 16, she was really eager to find someone who could give her the life that she wanted. Someone with potential. Now, as we know, James is back in school at Utah, and Sharon really felt that James had pulled away, so she ends up sending James a letter claiming, well, I'm pregnant. Whether it was true or not, we don't really know, but given that the relationship started off on one of her lies, I mean, is it a far jump to think that she was
Maybe
lying about this?
No, it's not just a small leap to believe.
Right. So James, after he receives this letter, he takes a leave from school. He goes back to Missouri, and he married Sharon on October 18th, 1956. And now to some, this marriage might seem like they're rushing it, but one, it's in the 1950s, and two, James was a Mormon man, and he believed in his faith, and he thought that this was the right thing to do.
For sure. Especially because, obviously, they had sex before marriage. And that's, especially in the 50s, a little frowned upon, especially in religious families and communities. You marry them. It was common.
100%. So at around the time of their marriage, James believed that Sharon was in her 20s, as we know. But he quickly learns that his wife was only 16 years old. So he feels really deceived and contemplated ending the marriage before it really even started. But his parents convinced him to stay.
And they were under the impression, they had a baby on the way. So, again, the right thing to do.
Stay with her.
Yeah.
But what was more confusing is that on James and Sharon's marriage license, it actually said that Sharon was 18 and a widow.
And keep in mind, she is actually only 16 at the time. So there's it's confusing, right?
Yeah, it was kind of
Is she already
believed
a
that
widow?
that wasn't true. But again, why is it on the certificate then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no real explanation to it, but Sharon went along with it and told people she'd been married while living in Washington and that her husband had died in a car crash.
She'd been married in Washington at the age of 15.
Yes.
And her husband died. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just run with that, I guess.
However, when people would ask about it later,
Mm-hmm.
she would actually just dodge the question completely. So, did she make that up too? Well, I think she obviously did.
Because it sounds a little ridiculous.
But maybe
of
as she got older, the lies were harder to tell. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe she forgot. I don't know.
So the following year, the Kinnes held a second wedding, and this one was more formal. It was held at the Salt Lake Temple in Utah after Sharon converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and became a Mormon.
Right, Bev. Now, that probably sounds like what she grew up as, but just in case anyone was wondering, it's a different denomination, and they're just slightly different. Don't ask me the details. I did not go on a deep dive into that, but it was enough of a difference that she actually had to convert
Yes.
to being a Mormon.
And just from what I know about some of my Mormon friends, I would say is if you are not in the religion, you cannot get married in the temple.
Right.
So to have that formal experience, she
Mhm.
would have to absolutely
Convert.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, around this time is when Sharon and James would have expected their first child, but sadly, Sharon said she had suffered a miscarriage. James, of course, was devastated, and even though he was a little unsure of his marriage, he had always been pretty ecstatic about being a father. So this hit him in the soul.
Yeah, it did.
And of course, we have kind of alluded to this already and talked about it, but it is speculated that Sharon lied about being pregnant because not only was James pulling away, remember, but it was speculated that she saw James as a way out of independence, which, as we know, she wanted to get out of there. So after their second wedding, the Kinnes moved to Provo, Utah, so that James could finish his studies at BYU. But that didn't last long. And by the end of the fall semester, he had already dropped out again, and they then returned to independence, settling into married life. Now, hearing that, I'm maybe the whole theory and speculation of her wanting to get out of independence wasn't the main motivator for her. Because I think it was just that he was pulling away and she wanted to keep the man,
Oh, for sure.
So that's just what I think.
Yeah, fair.
So once in independence, Sharon babysat and picked up retail jobs while James landed a stable job as an electrical engineer at Bendix Aviation. And in the fall of 1957, Sharon and James finally welcomed their first child, a little girl named Danna. And not too long after they had Danna, they also had a son named Troy. But sadly, as the family grew, so did the tension within the family. Part of that was due to the fact that Sharon had expensive taste. She liked to spend, and not modestly. Sharon spent the family's money almost as fast as James could make it. She would buy anything she wanted. But despite the growing tension, the family ultimately settled down. And they were able to, on James's salary, first live in a rented home right next door to his parents, but eventually could afford to buy their own ranch-style house at address 17009 East 26th Terrace in Independence, Missouri. And this was pretty problematic for Sharon because she, as we know, had always kind of wanted out of independence. And this move just solidified that this was where the family was rooted and they were not leaving.
Yeah, I bet she felt like just all her hopes and dreams just were crushed in that moment. She's never leaving. They own a home.
Yeah, what else are you going to do, right?
Right?
You could sell it and move, but your whole life is there now.
Yeah, I feel like in the 1950s, it's like you do buy a home
And you
and you
stay.
stay. Yeah.
It was a little bit of a different time, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, keep in mind, Independence, Bev, is also like this nice religious community. Like it's not extravagant. It's not exhilarating. There's no risk and rush happening, for people.
Yeah, and clearly she kind of like thrived on that.
Yeah. So this was hard for her.
Yeah, she like definitely wanted more excitement in her life. And I tell you, she got it, Becky, because around this time when they're settling down, having 2 children, buying their first home, Sharon was actually heavily involved in an affair with a high school friend named John Boldes. And this was not just a fling, this was a full-on relationship behind James's back. And by the early 1960s, James had had enough of her bullshit, and he was seriously considering divorce. He was frustrated by Sharon's reckless spending and was more than suspicious about her infidelity. So on March 18th, 1960, James told his parents that he was seriously contemplating a divorce and that Sharon had agreed to one if he let her keep the house, gave her full custody, and paid her $1,000 in alimony. So to put that a little bit in perspective for everyone listening, in today's standards, that would be the equivalent of like $10,600 in alimony. So
that's every month.
Yeah, so this is a huge alimony payment. Like, she wants it all.
Yeah.
Like, gosh darn it.
Like,
how dare she?
Sharon, right? He's a good father, for crying out loud. How dare you?
I know, and you're like, you're the one that's cheating. You're the one that's lying. You're the one that's spending all the money.
Yeah,
like how greedy bitch.
Right? How can you put these demands on someone when you're so in the wrong? Ugh.
People do the craziest shit, Becky.
That is the truth.
All for
money.
Yeah.
Sex. And drugs.
Yeah. I honestly didn't think that's where you were going, but yeah. So, James's parents, as we both know, were devout members of the church. And so, what did they do? Urged him to stay in the marriage. Divorce just wasn't something they believed in. However, it was pretty undeniable that both James and Sharon were unhappy in their marriage. So, the following day, after James had confided in his parents, March 19th, around 5:30 p.m., a call was placed to the Independence Police Department, and they were dispatched to none other than the Kinne residence. And the police arrived to a shocking scene. James was lying in the marital bed, dead. It was obvious he had been shot in the back of the head. He had been killed by a single bullet, and Sharon was visibly shaken but composed nonetheless, telling the officers it had all been a horrible accident. According to Sharon, their 2-year-old daughter, Danna, had been playing in the bedroom and had somehow found James's loaded pistol, climbed up on the bed and said, "How does this thing work, Daddy?" And then she heard a pop.
All right, Bev, I gotta ask, what is your initial thought on that series of events?
Well, I mean, it's like execution style. If she's talking to her dad, why would it be at the back of her head? I call bullshit, like, undoubtedly.
Right.
And I don't know, like, how close was Sharon to the room? Like, enough to hear her little 2-year-old say, "How does this thing work, Daddy?" Like, do you know what I mean? Like, was she, like, just outside of the room? Because, like, I don't know.
It seems outrageous, doesn't it?
Totally.
Like, so outrageous. The one thing I read, and now I don't know how factual this part is, but I'm going to throw it out there. It was said that James would often, like, clean his guns and then let her play with them.
The daughter.
Yeah, I can only assume unloaded, but honestly, what good parent in their right damn mind would just be like, "Hey, this is fun to play with," even though it's unloaded? Like, it's only one more step for it to be loaded and your kid to shoot it and hurt someone, like, according to Sharon, what happened, right? Like, doesn't that sound outrageous?
It does, especially because of our experience with father. I think we might have talked about this on a previous episode, but it's worth stating again because our uncle has guns. Mm-hmm. He's ex-military, and he brought one to our home. Mm-hmm. And our dad didn't know it was loaded and, like, was touching it and, like, actually shot the gun. It went through a door, through a window, through
a wall,
through a couch. Like, luckily no one was hurt in the process except for the dog who, like, had hearing, like, a little bit of, like, couldn't hear stuff for a while.
Yeah, and got scared, obviously.
And my dad got scared, but, like...
I've never seen our dad more scared in our life.
Yeah, so it's just, like, mistakes happen. I think you're right. Why would you let a child who's 2 play with a gun? I don't know, but I'm going to say it. Irregardless.
Oh, God. Yes.
The rest of the story just doesn't seem to add up. Like, it just doesn't. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the back of the head, it's like execution style.
Yeah, it's so specific. Like, maybe a leg or something.
Yeah,
by a 2-year-old. But
I'm still not buying it, even with that little bit of information there, Becky. So now, at first glance, the investigators didn't push too hard. You know, Sharon was young, attractive, and she came off as calm and cooperative. She cried when they expected her to, showed concern for her kids, and gave a statement that on the surface seemed tragic, but nonetheless plausible. And believe it or not, the authorities ended up buying it. At the end of the day, James's death was ruled an accidental shooting. No charges were filed. James was buried, and Sharon was left a young widow with 2 small children and a $29,000 life insurance policy in her name. And that's roughly over $250,000 in today's standards.
Yeah, so she was loaded.
That's ooh,
just like the gun. Yep.
You tend to do that. Like, oh God.
I think it's because it's on my wavelength at that moment, and so it just comes out.
Yeah.
Just on accident.
But she was wealthy, yes. On the other hand, though, like, even though authorities deemed this plausible, ruled it an accident, some of James's friends and family had major doubts.
Like we do.
Yeah, like the idea that a 2-year-old could find and pick up a heavy handgun, climb up on the bed, aim it precisely at her father's head and pull the trigger just, like, seemed outrageous. Not to mention the timing of his death. Because, as we know, it was just the day prior that James had told his parents about a possible divorce.
Right?
But without evidence to prove otherwise, suspicion alone wasn't enough.
Yeah,
and
fair.
the case was closed. So Sharon Kinne, officially a widow, and publicly, she played the part well. She grieved, she raised her children, and she kept up appearances. But behind the scenes, Sharon didn't exactly slow down. If anything, she was more active, socially and romantically than ever before. And one of the people that she got involved with was a local man named Walter Jones. And after James had passed away, Sharon went to buy a new car with the life insurance payout. Her salesman was Walter Jones, and the two instantly had an attraction to each other and began an affair on the other guy, you know, the high school guy.
Yeah, she's just affairing all over the place.
That's right. But the problem with this sexcapade was that Walter was married to a woman named Patricia Jones. And Patricia was a 23-year-old and Patricia,
or Delicia,
was the best stripper in town.
And with the swing of her hips, she started to strip. Does that ever make you wish your name was Patricia?
No.
Oh,
no.
You know, I don't think many people know that song. I've sung it more times than I'd like, but no one seems to know it except you.
Because of our mother.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thanks, ma'am. So, sorry, going back to Patricia. She's a 23-year-old mother of 2 who worked as a file clerk for the IRS. And poor Patricia had no idea what was going on behind her back. So in May of 1960, Sharon invited Walter to join her on a romantic trip to Washington. Just the 2 of them. Oh, Lordy, look at me go.
That's on the music quotes today.
We can make it if we try, just the 2 of us. Just you and I. Unfortunately, Walter declined. So he wasn't able to go on a trip without his wife being suspicious.
That's right.
We just said she had no idea, so this would be...
red flag.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, Becky, the problem with this rejection is that Sharon kind of has the attitude that she gets what she wants. But not this time.
Not this time.
So instead of canceling the trip, Sharon went with her brother, Eugene. And sure, you know, she tried to play it cool, but underneath, she was upset, rejected, and stewing.
Mm.
And when Sharon returned, she and Walter reunited on May 25th. But things just weren't the same. The air between them was tense, uneasy. And then Sharon dropped a bombshell. She told Walter she was pregnant with his child. Sounds familiar, Sharon.
Yes, it does, doesn't it, Bev?
Now, most likely she thought, like, this is going to seal the deal. Force Walter into choosing her over his wife. It had worked for her before, but she was wrong. Completely wrong. Instead of promising to leave Patricia, Walter did the opposite. He ended the affair. Now, you can imagine how this would make Sharon feel.
No.
Rejected.
Ooh, to the max.
Irate.
To the max.
And so on the following day, on May 26, 1960, Sharon called Patricia at work. She claimed that her sister and Walter were having an affair and would like to meet up later that evening to discuss it further.
How maniacal.
And poor, heartbroken Patricia agreed. And that's when Patricia lied to Walter, probably for the first time in her life, telling him she was going out because she had a meeting about a new potential job. However, when Patricia didn't come home that evening, Walter was very worried. And when she had not returned by the following morning, he was in a full-blown panic. He filed a missing persons report with the Independence Police and started making calls. He called her friends, her coworkers, and anyone who might have seen or heard from his wife. And that's when he got his first real lead. A few of Patricia's coworkers, people she had carpooled with, told Walter something odd. They said that Patricia had received a phone call earlier that day from an unnamed woman who wanted to meet up. And on the way home, Patricia asked to be dropped off at a street corner in town. And that's where they saw her get into a different car with a woman driver waiting nearby. Now, these coworkers didn't say they recognized the woman in the car, but they remembered enough to give like a general description. And when Walter heard it, he just had a gut feeling it was Sharon. So he calls her and he asks her point blank if she had seen or spoken to Patricia. And Sharon, well, she said yes.
She is a mighty bold woman, Bev.
I gotta say.
Yeah, she really is.
And she tells Walter that she had in fact met up with Patricia that day to tell her about the affair. Sharon claimed after they spoke, she dropped Patricia off near the Joneses' home and last saw Patricia talking to some unknown man in a green 1957 Ford. But of course, Walter isn't buying that. And after stewing for a bit on their conversation, he decides to go meet up with Sharon in person. He's desperate for answers. He's angry. He's kind of grieving his wife who is missing. And at one point, he admitted to getting so worked up that he held a key to Sharon's throat, demanding that she tell him the truth. And even with the threat of violence, she wouldn't tell him really anything about his wife.
My God, Bev, I can just like picture that interaction like in my brain and like how maniacal Sharon is. If someone held a key to my throat and I was like, oh my God, I think they're gonna, stab my aorta or my, not aorta. What am I saying? What is it called? What is it called? In the neck. I forgot.
Jugular.
Oh,
thank God.
Thank God. That would have killed me inside if I truly didn't hear it. Anyways, if someone was threatening to stab me or slice my throat with a set of keys, I would probably tell anything. Like anything.
I mean, like, fair. It would be a little scary, but again, it's like a key.
It can do some damage.
Yeah. It's just not as threatening as like a knife.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, he's not trying to go to jail, Bev.
Right. He seems like a decent, I don't know, decent.
To some capacity, sure.
I mean, he obviously cares about his wife.
Greatly.
Right. So that's what I'm trying to say, because as soon as I said decent, I was like, he did cheat on her, though.
Fair.
So
she's in this situation because of his actions. That's for dang sure.
So I was like, decent maybe isn't the right term, but either way, you can clearly see he's worried and cares about his wife.
Yeah. And it's crazy that Sharon was like, point blank, I'm not saying shit, mother effer. I don't care about your key to my throat.
Yeah, she seems
stone cold.
That's right. So, obviously, Walter had no intention of harming her. He's just more so desperate.
Yeah.
So, they end up parting ways. And after they do so, Sharon calls none other than her old flame, John Boldiz. And she asks for help finding Patricia. And John obliges. Just hours later, shortly before midnight, Sharon and John drove out to a secluded area that Sharon recommended they search. and it was just about a mile outside of Independence, a quiet spot. The kind of place you'd only know about if you'd been there before. And wouldn't you know it, Becky, they found Patricia Jones lying in the grass, dead.
I'm not surprised by this finding here, Bev.
No, God, as soon as we knew Sharon, as soon as Sharon was calling Patricia, we knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, we did.
But she kind of just outed herself too, right? Like she drives right to the secluded place where there's a dead body. Like, what are the chances, Sharon?
Right? I think she's leading up to this point, I thought she was a little more calculated than that. Because why would you go show a dead body if you did that? Like, why would you take someone directly there?
I feel like it's that classic case of someone who is psychopathic, just getting a little too confident and self-assured, you know?
Yeah.
Being like, no one will assume it's me. Pretty old me who got away with murder before.
That's right. I'm Sharon.
Right. So when they find Patricia, she was wearing a black sweater and a yellow skirt. And she had been shot 4 times with a .22 caliber pistol. The fatal shot, though, had entered her mouth on an upward trajectory, most likely fired as she was either sitting or laying down. And another round had passed clean through her abdomen, and 2 more entered through her shoulders, heading downward. There were also powder burns on the hem of her skirt, which was just evidence that the shots were fired at a close range. And Patricia's autopsy estimated her time of death around 9 p.m. on May 26th. So the police immediately got to work, and they started by questioning the 3 people at the center of it all: Sharon, Walter, and now John. And on May 28th, all 3 of them were brought in for interviews. Walter and John were up front. They both gave written statements admitting they'd dated Sharon at different times, and when asked if they'd take lie detector tests, both agreed without any hesitation. But Sharon, she wasn't cooperative at all. She did give the police an oral statement, but refused to sign anything. She also declined a lie detector test. Red flag? Well, maybe, but legally she wasn't obligated to comply. But, I mean, just because you're not obligated doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, right?
Exactly.
So, on May 30th, Sharon was brought back in for more questioning, and John returned on the 31st. That same day, Sharon's brother Eugene was also interviewed, but he too refused to answer any questions. And while these interviews were going on, another team of investigators were hard at work at the crime scene. They were bound and determined to find that murder weapon, or at least the bullet that had passed through Patricia's body. So they combed the area thoroughly, sifted dirt, dragged nearby lakes and ponds. They even brought in a troop of Boy Scouts to help with the search. And eventually, they did in fact find a .22 caliber shell casing buried in the ground right where Patricia's body had been found. And this tiny detail supported one major theory, that Patricia had been shot at the scene and not killed somewhere else and moved. But the actual gun? Well, that was still missing. And all of their searches came up empty-handed. And on the night of May 31st, just as mourners were saying their final goodbyes at Patricia's funeral, police made their move. They arrested Sharon at her home for the murder of Patricia Jones. And the case didn't stop there, because that same night, the Jackson County Sheriff asked prosecutors to consider a second murder charge, this time for the death of James Kinne, Sharon's late husband, who had died just 3 months earlier under suspicious circumstances.
They're like, well, if she killed someone else, maybe she actually did kill her husband.
Yeah, and in such a short time span too, in the similar method, it's all just too fishy.
It is. It's too fishy.
Now, Sharon's legal team was led by Alex Peebles and Martha Sperry Hickman, and they moved fast. The very next morning, they filed a writ of habeas corpus challenging her arrest. And that afternoon, the court released Sharon on a $20,000 bond, pending a preliminary hearing set for June 16th.
That's a huge bond. Remember how much we said the $1,000 was estimated?
Yes.
In nowadays? 10,000.
Yeah,
right?
So this is huge.
It's 200,000. I mean, it is only 20 because it's in the 50s, but that's a lot of money for then, is what I'm getting at.
Now, correct, can you please explain to me what a bond is again? I know, because I think if someone is high risk for suspicion of a pretty heinous crime, they get a really high bond.
Yep.
And they can't pay it usually because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah,
so
or
they
they
stay
have-
in prison.
Yeah, or they have to go through a bondsman who like take that risk on. And so basically if they don't show up for like their next court case, then the bondsman is after you.
Right.
Big trouble. Big trouble.
So why is she just released? Did somebody pay it?
The bondsman.
Oh, so she did get somebody to pay it.
Well, she bonded out. Well, that's what paying it means. But yeah, like the bondsman paid it for her. And so she was released. But in all fairness, why would you let anyone suspected of murder out on bail?
Bond. I know. Oh, bail.
Bail bond. Yeah. Okay,
That's
sorry,
why I
Bev.
was like, no, I
was
get
like,
it.
why doesn't she get it?
No, I literally was like, bond is a different word than I remember. So I got all confused. But bail, bond, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that same day that she's released, those scheduled polygraphs were finally administered to Walter and John. And the results, both were found to be truthful, confirming their suspicions about Sharon. And there were a couple other things other than her denying the lie detector test that really stacked against Sharon. Number one being, the police had gotten a tip. The man who worked with Sharon told investigators he had secretly bought a new .22 caliber pistol for her at her request back in early May. He said he had initially registered the gun in Sharon's name, but when she found out that it was in her name, she was very angry and demanded it to be changed to his name. Secondly, she was having an affair with Walter. Thirdly, she was the last person to see Patricia alive. Fourthly, Sharon's story changed multiple times. Additionally, I'm changing it up. I'm like, fifthly, I don't know how that keeps going. I'm like, is there a real word for it? Because if there is, like, I don't know it. Anyways, so her story changed multiple times. She seemed to have known where Patricia's body was. John, her lover, had told police that Sharon had once asked him to kill her husband James for $1,000, or if he wouldn't, did he know someone who could? Also, James Kinne had also been killed with a .22 caliber gun. Now, all of this is pretty circumstantial, and the police really lacked the physical evidence that they needed.
Which sucks, because I feel like the circumstances, in regards to the evidence, it's just like, how could it not have been Sharon to kill both of them?
100%.
Right?
Like, just between you and I, Becky, she did it.
Fuck yeah, she did it.
But, of course, the police can't just go on circumstantial evidence, and they really started trying to find that physical evidence to put, the nail in the coffin and get her convicted of murder.
Yeah.
And when police searched Sharon's house, they didn't find the gun. But they did find an empty box, one that appeared to have held a firearm. And when asked about it, Sharon changed her story, first saying she lost the gun on a trip to Washington, then later saying it had simply disappeared, and then implying it had been stolen.
Now, Sharon, not all of those three things can happen here. And I feel like if you lost your gun in Washington, I feel like most people would report it as missing or stolen or something, right?
Yeah.
Just, oh, shoot, I lost a gun. There's just another random gun floating around the world to kill people with.
Yeah, so she's scrambling.
I feel like that.
Now, on top of it, the .22 caliber gun that James was killed with had been in police custody the whole time. But we do still have that coworker that admitted to buying the gun, so this is probably, most likely, a different one that she killed Patricia with.
Right.
Now, the original autopsy on Patricia, police and prosecutors were not impressed with. They felt key steps had been skipped, like the recovery of bullets from the body and a proper analysis of stomach contents to prove time of death.
And I feel like that part is actually somewhat important, right? Because, for example, if they knew what Patricia had eaten for lunch or something like that, the day that she went missing, maybe through the stomach contents, they could tell if she was dead that day, or if for some reason someone held her captive overnight and killed her the following day, right?
Yes.
So it's like, what? Why wasn't that checked out, their autopsy person?
I feel like the bummer about it is because the circumstantial evidence states Sharon being the last person to see her, so having that evidence could connect Sharon more closely to the murder.
Yeah, it's just like one more little check mark. Be like, Still looking suspicious, Sharon.
Yeah, and it's like that story you said about her being seen with a unknown male could not possibly be true.
Exactly.
Or what have you.
Yeah, you are correct.
Now, the man who sold the .22 caliber gun to Sharon's co-worker friend, his name was Roy Thrush, and he tries to help the investigation. He took police to a tree where he'd allegedly fired test bullets from that gun. But when those bullets were dug out of the tree trunk and tested, they were inconclusive. They couldn't be matched to the bullets that killed Patricia.
How unlucky.
Yeah, just another, like...
Close evidence. Close call evidence, but not quite.
Yeah, not
no
quite.
smoking gun.
That's right. So, the pathologist, on the other hand, Dr. Hugh Owens, he defended his work, saying he'd recovered one of the bullets and that the body had already been embalmed by an undertaker before the autopsy even began.
That's a huge error there. How can you defend that? That seems freaking stupid.
Yeah, why the fuck would they do that?
Right? Because that means that, like, if there was any toxins in her body, stomach content, it just wouldn't have been that reliable, you know? Because, like, embalming fluid, that, you know, it preserves the body. It changes the chemical compounds of everything. You know, considering it's a freaking murder, why would that be the choice they made? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess the reason why he defended his work, even though it seems ludicrous, right, is that he admitted that there was no food that was visible in Patricia's stomach at the time of examination, so he felt like, I did a good job. But it seems like an error.
I mean, if she was embalmed, how do you know? How do you really know?
And prosecutors were not satisfied,
No,
Becky.
They were pissed.
So they had Patricia's body exhumed on June 17th to recover the remaining bullets and collect any possible stomach contents or tissue samples.
Just in the hopes.
Yeah, like they still need physical evidence, so they're going to do everything they can.
Yeah.
Everything's falling flat, and they really haven't progressed in this case.
Yeah, like at all. That's so devastating. That must, you know, as a prosecutor or detective, surely that must be one of the most frustrating things when you're sitting there and be like, I'm like 99% sure that we have our killer and we know who you are. We know you did it, but we don't have a fucking shred of evidence that can like convince a jury that you are.
And the crappy thing about all of this is that Sharon's arraignment was to take place on July 11th, and she was in fact charged with the murder of James Kinne and Patricia Jones, and bail was at first denied, but within days the Missouri Court of Appeals overturned that decision, stating that the evidence against her was only circumstantial. So she was released again, but this time on a $24,000 bond. And then, just as trial prep got underway, there was another twist. Sharon claims she's pregnant yet again, and because of this, her trial was delayed. Now, you might think she had done this as a manipulation tactic, but on January 16th, 1961, she gave birth to a baby girl named Marla Christine, according to the Kansas Star. The child was, in fact, Walter's.
Shit.
What?
She was not lying.
The fuck?
Damn it. We literally were like, you're such, what a liar, basically. What a manipulator. Try to get what she wants by lying about a baby. But boom, she actually had one.
Okay. Obviously, I'm shocked at this little detail.
You are. She's like speechless right now. Love it.
Wow. Anyways, it doesn't change a damn thing because I still think she's guilty, but holy shit, I could be wrong again. But anyways, moving on. Okay, let's erase the mistakes of the past. Eventually, after she has Marla Christine, the trial for Patricia Jones was rescheduled for about mid-July of 1961. And the courts began jury selection. In the end, it was an all-male jury. And days later, the trial began. Now, my heart cannot take it because I just feel like with an all-male jury, Becky, knowing that this woman is beautiful, it might work in her favor. I'm just going to say that right now. But it's also really juicy going forward, and it doesn't necessarily go the way you might think. It's not just like cut and dry.
No.
And there's a lot more to happen.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave you guys here.
Gonna leave you hanging.
Gonna leave you hanging.
Suckers.
The outcome will not be told today. But what we do know is that Sharon is on the hook for 2 murders And she's going to go to trial for both of them.
Exactly. So next week, you got to come back, listen to our part 2 to see the conclusion of this trial.
Absolutely. Well, Becky, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing.
And just your weekly reminder to download our weekly episodes, follow us on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, and give us a follow on our social medias. You can find us at Luminol on the Wall. Can't wait till next week.